Welcome back to the Hypervision podcast. Noah is yawning because it is 12:01 in the morning currently. I had to wake him up before we filmed this. But we're here. We're back. It's been a little bit. Episode 54. Yeah, we got Ian. I did say at one point Ian and Tyler were staying away for a bit because we've used them too much. But me and Noah were trying to film a week ago. Never had an idea pop up. So we're going back to the well, as in Ian.
Oh, it's good to be back.
Yeah, no, it's always a good episode with you. Even other people that I know listen to the podcast outside of us. They always say, "Oh yeah, when's Ian going back on?" So, well, I guess now.
Oh, I'm glad to be here. You guys are always great at giving me new ideas and new perspectives.
I think likewise too. It's always a good time whenever Ian joins. So
I'm currently scared. Shadow's looking at me like I'm.
Ow! Ah! Headphone users beware. I'm not taking that out. We are past midnight. This is the unhinged episode. Imagine if we filmed one with Michael after midnight. I mean, he'd be asleep before you. It wouldn't happen, but
I mean, usually I'm fine. I don't know. I guess the drive home. I'm not at my apartment, so.
You didn't buy that back there. You didn't decorate the wall with that clock.
No. This is all not me. Not me. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Noah's staying at a lover's house tonight. So.
Nope. Not doing that. I'm back to the old stomping grounds. So.
Yeah. We'll get everything out of the way first. Number one, shout out Josiah.
Yep.
That's it. So we have Ian here. Ian is normally one of the few guests that usually gives topics on topics for us. So we have things to talk about for once, besides waffling for about 45 minutes. I don't know if you want to take that, Ian. If you have a direction you want to go with it.
Yeah. Given the current social climate that has kind of enveloped America, I've been thinking a lot about the aspects of community and how we got here. How did we arrive at a place where hate and vitriol and demagoguery is so appealing to the masses? And it made me think about a book I read in grad school called Bowling Alone and the Destruction of American Communities. And so that's how I landed on the topic of talking about community with you two to understand in what ways do you garner your worldviews, your perspectives, your opinions from the ideas you cultivate yourself, as well as the ideas that you share with the people closest around you. And who do you go to talk about things that maybe aren't necessarily directly personally troubling, but may trouble you about the social climate you exist in, the social world you exist in? Where do you go and who do you talk about your external anxieties with, and how you foster those communities? So that's kind of the genesis of where I started with this topic, and I was really interested in where, I guess we can start here, of when you're trying to cultivate your opinion about the world around you. And when I say world, I mean, let's just take the United States, since that's where we all live. When you're trying to cultivate your opinion on the United States, what communities do you turn to? How do you define that?
I don't know if I have too much of an opinion of the United States, honestly. I think, like you both know, like if we're going politically, nothing is in my mind there, pretty much. I give it no attention really, besides whatever comes up mainstream, like very high mainstream. I don't know. I kind of do my own thing though. Otherwise, like lifestyle wise, I'm sure there are things that I'll probably think of throughout this, but I don't. Maybe it's just because I've had a fairly privileged life that like I don't really. I don't know if I view like it just kind of seems like that's how life should work. Every time I go out and do things, like you just go out, go to the grocery store, you have your life, you go to work, you go to coach. I go hang out with my friends. I go to the bar sometimes, or like just go play sports, sit at home, play video games. Pretty simple.
No, sleepy man.
Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like for me, I think it's kind of what you see on social media. I try not to let like that um shape how I view the United States. I think I like to make my own kind of generalization. Um, I think, if you take a lot of that stuff from social media, you really have to take it with a grain of salt sometimes. Um, I talk with I know you mentioned like who you like talk to, like I talk to my dad. He's like not major like politically, but like he has some knowledge, and I talk to him about like certain issues or whatnot, and just get his opinion. But he always mentions like, hey, like make your own opinion. I'm not trying to sway you one way or the other. This is just how I feel. Feel free to make your own generalization. So I just kind of like you got to do your own research, kind of see what you believe in and what you feel what you feel is right. So I kind of just do it that way, looking at social media and taking it with a grain of salt and just kind of doing your own research from there pretty much.
That's interesting. And this is lovely because both of you answered. Drew, you talk about not having much thought um, in that area, but I think that your world is intentionally cultivated in where you can experience the external, so outside your person, right? Like the soccer team you coach or the job that you have, um, directly. The investments you make in your community don't necessarily feel tied to, let's say, the larger scale social orientation of one's existence, one's your I guess your place in the world. You know your place within your community. You know the things that you like to do. Um, and no, I also find it interesting that you turn to your dad um, as a trusted confidant to bounce ideas off of, because in Robert Putnam's book, he wrote this book. It was in the 1990s, where he talked about Bowling Alone, the degradation of the American community was essentially that America is becoming more and more isolated. And he had his whole thesis was that in isolation, that kind of lays the groundwork for an extremist agitator, because people aren't necessarily talking to their friends or their family or their in person relationships anymore. Instead, they're getting a lot of their worldviews curated through digital means. The big thing then was the TV. And his whole thing was that the TV is going to isolate humanity. We're not going to go out there and experience the world. We are instead going to see the world and then come to whatever conclusion we want. And we're not going to interact with the very people that the, our communities would bring. And so he called it Bowling Alone because people had used to be in bowling leagues. When was the last time you heard of someone in a weekly bowling league with their neighbors? And like being truthful, I talk to one of my neighbors. I call him OG, and he tells me about, not to incriminate myself, but he tells me about his criminal activity, and I just nod and smile because I don't want to get got. Um, but I found that in a way I cherish that relationship, not necessarily because I greenlight his criminal activity, but he allows me to see a perspective in the human experience that I wouldn't have as a result. And because of that interaction, I think for the most part, it's made me more understanding of how someone, because he grew up in gang culture, and that was kind of what he knew growing up. That was who he interacted with. And he often talks about the principles of growing up in gang culture. And he peeled back the curtain for me a little bit when he said, "What's going on now isn't the gang culture I grew up with," because he's in his or late 50s, turning 60 soon. Um, and he essentially said that kids are growing up now proving themselves, wanting to prove themselves to other guys in their gangs, right? They pull out a gun and they don't understand that a gun doesn't have a moral compass. Once you shoot, you have to deal with the consequences. And he said when he was growing up, you had your gun, but that was a last resort. You'd fight. It was principled that you don't kill someone unless you had to. Um, and he talks about how now, because a lot of these kids aren't connected to the communities, they some of them will be coming from affluent neighborhoods into the hood to gangbang. Um, that there is a lack of connection, there's a lack of adherence to certain principles, and so that's his theory for why you'll see inner city violence, that is on quite dangerous. And in all of these interactions that I've had, like with people like OG, it has made me more compassionate to about it's made me more empathetic and more compassionate regarding where they come from, the experiences they have, and you start to understand the bedrock of their opinions. And so I want to raise a question to you, both of you. When you see that we are no longer having those types of interactions with, say, the people that live around us, we're staying in our own bubble, we're kind of only talking to the same people about the same issues and not extending our community outreach further, um, do you think that's what's led to this level of vitriol that individuals have, that everyone is getting their own curated version of reality based off of what Robert Putnam thought would be the TV, which has really become our cell phones?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Absolutely. It's like it's just we're just so divided right now, and no matter which side of the political spectrum I feel you fall on, I don't know, it just feels different. I guess it's weird now because we're older. I guess I really didn't like care or worry too much about it whenever I was younger, but like talking with my dad now, it's like I don't know, it's just you talk about issues um and that's really about it. Like I'm like I think you should be able to have a conversation with your friends about that. Like they say, don't talk about like politics or religion, but it doesn't have to be about politics. Just I don't know, just certain worldviews. I don't know. It's just don't talk about it anymore. And it's yeah, I think you're right. It's all like you look through it through your cell phone and you see it on social media and you kind of just formulate your own opinion, which I think is fine, but you are in this like bubble and you just kind of keep it to yourself, right? And you're not like talking to people about it. So I don't know.
Drew, what do you think?
I mean, I think I agree with Noah there. It's weird of just like there's a big division just when you talk about people and it's like all these worldviews. Like, not to, I don't know if bringing up TikTok things is like brain rot kind of things, or if saying brain rot is brain rot. I don't know, but um, like the whole sketch situation that just came up recently, like it was nothing bad. It was literally just that he liked men, and like it was like an insane thing that like people were like, he was apologizing like crazy. People are making posts for him like, hey, this is a good guy right here. Like, all that changed in a 24-hour period was his sexuality. And like people had to go out and like publicly stand that they support him, and like, this is a good guy, like we promise there's nothing wrong with him. It's just like every like I thought like that was like a, yeah, yeah, okay, cool, we all understand Sketch is a cool guy, like whatever. But like it just had to apparently be said because so many people were like, I don't know, I think Sketch's career might be gone, like all these things. And I was just like, that doesn't make sense though. Like, he didn't do anything. He just woke up
I
one day and people found out that he liked men.
in To me, this sketch is a great example of the power of punditry, that we've replaced conversations that we'd have with our friends, like where you're like, did you see this, like what do you think about this, like, oh, this sketch situation, and your friend will say, yeah, I mean, who really cares, like that's his personal life,
Yeah.
everybody was making money off of OnlyFans at the time, like why does that concern you so much? But because of the lack of, I think, in-person community to have those types of conversations, we've replaced it with like weird punditry where these people that have other big followings start offering up their opinions, and in a way they shape the discourse surrounding a topic. Whereas if you catch an individual on the street, they're not going to treat someone's sexuality as though it's like the plague and they can no longer be associated with. But because the punditry has this powerful pull on public opinion, since no one is sharing discourse in a meaningful way, um, I think what ends up happening is that you have the battle of online opinion, where then you have to get endorsements to prove that you're more right, instead of people taking a step back and saying, well, what are we really doing here? We're trying to villainize someone because he may be bisexual or gay. What does that actually do? Um, and maybe when we have more real life relationships where we're going out of our way to put ourselves in uncomfortable situations, where we're interacting with ideas that we're not 100% sold on, it maybe it's only then that we can begin to see each other again. I think there is an immense sense of blindness among people, among that may have differing experiences, that may have differing worldviews. And I remember I learned this in undergrad, where I went to a, and I think this started a lot of my reverence that I do have for Islam. I think Islam is a beautiful religion in terms of its tradition, and it's the idea of the, the followers of that religion praying every single day and the discipline that it takes. But I could only learn to appreciate that by interacting with people that were in that space. That when those people weren't near my life, it was either out of sight or out of mind, or allowing my opinion of those people to be formed by external individuals that may have already created or curated a perspective about them. Um, and I wonder if, because we lack these communities of diverse interests and diverse people, we no longer operate in a shared reality, where what is truth anymore when you don't have community? I've been really wrestling with that question, is how can we find truth if we all don't agree on a objective reality, that certain actions are unacceptable, like lying, cheating, stealing, murder. um, what happens when we that isn't the baseline? anymore? And how do you discern from that point what is true and what is not true?
Yeah, I mean that's the overlying question. I just it sucks because people can just sit behind their phone and go on Twitter or X or anything like that. Reply or make their own opinion, and I don't know. Like, so what's the solution, right? Like, how do we get people to have these like real interactions, these community driven conversations? Like what do we need to do? I guess.
We just ban the internet.
I mean,
As I'm saying this
it's
from our
it's
online
tough.
podcast, but
I mean, I don't know. It's
I
tough.
I don't know if I believe it's a product of the internet. I think it's a collection of the internet has exacerbated the issue, but I
Yeah,
think it's a
yeah,
collection of other tangential points that when human beings have always sought to live by people that are part of their in group or perceived to be part of their in group. Um, that is throughout history. Um, Human beings have always had these weird hierarchical top down structures where we believe that we set up monarchies. I think monarchies were one of the most illegitimate forms of government, but I think that hinted at so much of humans desire for power, centralized power, and top down communication. um, and I think the key, at least in my estimation, and I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this. And it may sound out of the loony bin, and I'm okay with that being the case. But one, America needs more third spaces, places like libraries where you don't necessarily have to go and spend money in order to interact with people. I think that needs to be a baseline. I think two, um, we can't feel that it's weird to talk to each other. How many times have, and one of the things that I've started practicing is that if like I see a guy that has a cool shirt or a cool hat, doing that subtle thing of telling him like, hey, I like your shirt, I like your hat, or great shoes. And it's been one of the mental points that I've made a priority, because that's creating a touch point. That's reminding at least myself that I am but one person in this larger sea of people, and these people all have their unique stories and experiences, that color their perception of reality. Um, and so, third places are a necessity, um, and having those kind of random off off the field, out of nowhere conversations with strangers is also necessary. The third thing would be communal living, in the sense of, instead of buying solely single homes and everyone living in their single home or single apartment, um, people small family units or multiple family units own parcels of land, and they each have houses on that parcel of land, but the houses operate as one community unit with things like a shared garden. Imagine if we did that with our friends. I was like, imagine the types of community bonds that we would have as a result, where everybody still has their independent home where they are raising their family and their kids. But you're doing something like taking care of a shared garden, and maybe in that garden there's these birds that it's four of your friends' families that you're taking care of. Those small things of in this individualized world having those communal experiences, I think, could then color our discourse, where we become more empathetic, more compassionate, more understanding, and quicker to listen. I Those are some of my solutions. The third one I think is the craziest. I don't know if people would take that up, but I do think it could work. The idea of living with and living near uh, people that are important in how you cultivate your worldview, and making sure that that group of people comes from drastically different backgrounds and and brings in their experience to that equation. I think it could be an interesting experiment.
I mean, I wouldn't say anything that's crazy. I like it. The with the like library, kind of like what you call them, third places or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Uh, I think that's a great idea. Like, just in any kind of like social situation, whether it's just like you're trying to find friends or you're trying to go to places with your current friends and just go talk to other people, or if it's in like another like if it's in like a dating scenario, like you're trying to find someone that you just like talk to people, see where it can go. It's tough these days because like on the dating side, you've either got like dating apps, which for a lot of people have a stigma to them, or whatever.
Hmm.
It's 12:30. I might have the wrong word, but like there's a weird vibe around dating apps for people. Like it's not the best thing usually. It works for some people, or it doesn't work for other people. Some people don't like it, um, or like it almost just kind of seems like your only other option is go to the bar and talk to people, which then
Yeah.
costs money. There's a lot of bad sides to that too. Just there's a whole lot of spirals and all the things that can come from that. And then like if you just want to go find friends, like you just moved to Charleston, Noah, you were in Akron. Like if it's not from work, what what do you really see that's like, oh, I could go find friends there? Like
Exactly.
like I guess you
It,
go to the Y and play basketball or something like that. Like find someone
there's
at the gym that's they're cool, but like a lot of people don't want to
it's
talk at the gym either.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating phenomenon to me about we live in this country that is so hyper individualized, that we've almost made the bedrock of human nature is communication, and we've made that taboo because we're so individualized, that we don't have places where people go to merely exist. And what is a reality where to exist you have to pay for it? I just can't find that ethical in any respect. I think we're in desperate need of those third places where people can go and talk and be reminded that they are so small in a universe that is so vast, and that there is so much they don't know, and naturally that makes you more receptive, I think, to different people, different experiences, and different ideas.
Yeah. Also with your third point, another great idea, I think, honestly. It's almost like bringing college with you after you leave it.
Yeah,
Because I mean, like even
I
when you
was
leave
gonna.
college, it's like a big culture shock. Like everyone, like getting to college is a big culture shock. Leaving college is another big culture shock. Like you had what like for Wilmington, that's different. And like some schools are like you're in the dorm for 1 year and you're out pretty much. Like Wilmington, we had 2 years in the dorms, and then even then the third and fourth years are practically still like you're still on campus, but you're in like apartments. So like it's all still very tight knit, and it's a small school. So like it's 2, 3, 4 years of just like constantly having someone around you, people below you, people next to you, across the hall, all these kinds of things. Um, and then you immediately leave, and Noah's back in Akron, Tyler's back in Columbus, Adam's in Cincinnati, Nick's in Columbus, all these things. Everyone's everywhere else. You've lived in 9 different states since we graduated high school, and people are everywhere. Um, because I've even had a couple of Tyler's friends, like they've talked about it because like they live up in the farmland of Columbus, so like there's land everywhere. And like every once in a while, you will see those like there's just like one little street off to the thing, and then off that street is just 4 different houses, and it's just like this community of people that live all in the same place, and like those look awesome. And every time we're kind of like that'd be kind of cool one day, like we have this area of land, like your house is there, my house is there, and there's all this stuff that we can do. Um, yeah, I don't think there's anything crazy about that. I mean, obviously, like if someone doesn't like it, they just don't like it. They like their own, they like ther privacy, and I get that. Because in college it's the same kind of way. Like at a certain point, you see them too much. Like, but there'd be more space to this, I guess. Separate houses and all that, but still, I guess I could get it.
Yeah, I was gonna.
Noah's fighting demons, bro.
No, no. I mean, yeah, but no, I was gonna mention college. I think you could start there. I think yeah, you made a good point, Drew. I was gonna say that you're all you're legitimately all just together in
Mhm.
that like one area. Um, so yeah, you can start there, and then but yeah, then you eventually do disperse. So it makes it different. But then yeah, I think the idea of the community having it all together, and then having something to do like a garden, or I'm trying to think of like other activities that you could do, like that could just build relationships. Um, I don't know. I'm sure there's other stuff, but wow.
I'm
Did you
about to
lose it
be
right there?
attacked. Huh?
Oh, there he is. The
I'm
one and
being
only.
attacked.
The one and only Shadow.
This monster. Ow. But Noah, I there's actually a couple studies done on the idea of college and why people find college to be so rewarding. And it's a few things. It's that college campuses represent um, walkable cities, and I'm a big believer in walkable cities. I think so much of American unhappiness is built in the fact that to go to the grocery store a quarter mile away, you need a like 4 ton hunk of metal with wheels to go there. Um, and and at college, there was so much that you could do in walking distance. You're hungry, you could walk to the cafeteria. You want to work out, you could walk to the gym. Um, at my school, we had all these small, like little stores on campus that if you needed like something like toilet paper or mouthwash, it didn't become a big endeavor to go walk the mile over there, buy it, walk back with your friends. You know, you're talking, you're laughing, you're living life. And so I think if we curate walkable cities that will create third places where people are amongst each other, where people see each other again, and understand that their perspective isn't the only perspective in the world, and they're forced to interact, and so I think these things are all interconnected. The isolation of American cities, where um, we exist in our car, in the office, and at home. Those are the only three places we exist when the human spirit is supposed to be unbound. We're supposed to be in and within life. And I think these isolated car driven cities don't help that in curating third places. And that's why they say that people find college to be so rewarding. It's their first experience living amongst their friends in a place where they aren't doing everything alone. And I find it very fitting that so many Americans say college was great. And I'm like, it was great because colleges are really good at cultivating places for you to meet people and actually make friends.
Yeah. But I'd say the only downside to that is like the thing you're talking about is like you want all these third places to be around that don't cost money. College costs a lot of
Yes.
money.
Yes.
So if we can somehow
And
find a way to bring college out, all the things that involve that, bring it out into the real world, into your adult life without the $45,000 a year. Um, but I guess that's kind of just where we're at today. Is obviously it's not as much money, just to go hang out with people. Like if you want to go out to the bar, it's not going to cost you $45,000 a year, probably, unless you're going hard. But
Bottle service, baby. Let's
yeah,
do
I
it.
guess if you're going to clubs, maybe I don't.
but you have to think about, in my mind, the cost isn't just monetary. That, yeah, to an experience like college will cost you copious and unethical amounts of money, um, but also the experiences of being forced to pay for human interaction over the course of your lifetime, I think are far more drastic, um, especially for my area of interest recently has been with young men and boys. because that's been a space that's kind of been co-opted by a lot of right-wing grifters that don't mean well for a lot of young men and boys. I think we've talked about this before, um, where what we need to be teaching young men isn't, to drink a cup of coffee, smoke a cigarette, go run 5 miles, and then have sex with as many women as they possibly can. What we need to be teaching young men is how to curate genuine friendships with vulnerability, and that can only be curated in community. Friendships where you can tell them how you're doing and you don't have to be drunk to do it. Um, and if we do that, I think we can end a lot of this hate filled um, hate filled radicalization. That if we create and curate these spaces, these walkable cities, these third places that aren't put that they're not created with a dollar price in mind, but instead people in mind. If we do that, I think young men and young boys will be forced um, out of the coffin that is internet based isolation. It will force them to interact genuinely with the world and encounter the ideas that make them uncomfortable, and force them to ask themselves why those ideas make them uncomfortable. And naturally that will put you at a position to be more empathetic. um, every person that's committed every young man that's committed mass violence has done so because they felt alone. And if we can create an environment of intentionality in building community, um, I think we can create a new generation of healthier young men who are safer. Um, they're safer partners for whoever they end up dating. They're safer coworkers. I think if we do a good job at and not doing the cringy, like, I'm trying to sell you a course on becoming a millionaire, so I made steaks with my boys stuff. No, but if we taught um, through intentional community, if we taught young men the power in expression and emotion and vulnerability and honesty, um, and if we showed them that that's what it meant to be a good person, and these are things that you can only show people through being that to them, um, I think that's how maybe a generation from now, when we're kind of old and crusty, maybe we will have given our grandkids something better, than what we're on now. Because what I see, the isolation that I see, the pain that I see, the vitriol that I see, um, it starts in one place, and oftentimes it's these grifters on the internet that latch on to a generation of isolated, lonely young guys who don't feel like anyone out there understands what they're going through. And imagine, um, if those young guys understood that people care, people love them, and you don't need some guy with his shirt off smoking a cigar to tell you that you're valuable.
Yeah,
I don't think I have anything to be able to follow that up with. I think you hit everything.
But I, I'm optimistic. I've struggled for a few weeks. I think I talked to you guys about this on Xbox recently. Was it last week or maybe the week before? Um, that I go through these cycles of depression and anxiety, and it's been in those cycles that I've really learned the value of talking to people, talking to the confidants, um, because what a good friend does is they bear the weight of the world with you. Um, I think about how, at least for me, the the holy book that I ascribe to, the Bible, says that a good friend sticks closer like a brother, closer than a brother. And I I've realized that if we're going to improve, like the conversation started, if we're going to improve the political climate, I think we first have to understand that we are our brother's keeper. And until we get that, we will always remain vulnerable to these demagogues, these individuals who see anger and isolation and want to seize on that. People that don't spew optimism about the future, but instead spew hate. That once we learn we're our brother's keeper, I don't think hate has any home in our culture. And to get there, it takes friends, and it seems so simplistic, but at the heart of it, that's I think what my last bit of depression taught me. It was that it takes friends.
Yeah. I mean, I think those are things a lot of people struggle with, talking, just like how you just open up there about those things. It's very hard sometimes, just to be able to talk to people. It's a lot easier to keep it in. I think I've talked about that just a couple times here, just of how, like I'll eventually talk about something, but like I'll bring it up on this podcast like 8 months after the fact because I was like, I can deal with it, like, just whatever. But like the moment I talk to somebody about it, like instantly, like 5 times better. It's crazy how, like,
Yep.
if I just didn't, you know, try to do it all myself and, talk to someone else that has a different perspective, that's lived a different life than me, that like not only could it have fixed that issue, but also like there's a back and forth there. I can help them, they can help me, we can move forward with things. And at that point forward, there's more open communication for the future. Whether that means I can go back to them because I know that that worked, or that like they can come to me then, you know, whether or not it's
Mm-hmm.
an immediate, like a little mustard seed kind of thing, just like it's a little bit of a plant somewhere, but like eventually that sprouts into something. But yeah, I think that that's something that's really tough. It's just, realizing that there's so many simple things, and something we talked about before with like that challenge we did, the 80 moderate. Those were all really small simple things, like, but they're all things that stacking up really help you improve like your mental health, your lifestyle, and just all these things that like eventually build a platform for you to go out and do the things that you finally have wanted to do. It's like kind of, yeah, it's just something that I think it's big, but I put to the side a lot, and it's very easy to just get back into your comfort zone. And you know I think, what's the
Yeah,
saying, like, life starts at the end of your comfort zone? Is that what it is?
something
Something
like
like
that.
that.
I just feel like it's been social norm too, which is ridiculous. That as men you're just supposed to keep your feelings in, like that's like, oh, you're a man, like don't express your feelings, don't talk to people, right? It's like I just think that's ridiculous. Like I have a small group of friends. I've talked to Drew about stuff. If we ever need to talk, about something really deep. Um, I think that comes with a balance. We read the book, Drew. I'm blanking on the title of the book. Um,
Ego's the enemy.
no, the other one. Um,
Oh, chatter.
Chatter,
Yeah.
and it talked about in there. It said, hey, like be that person you can talk to, but like don't. I forget how it kind of represented that, but it was like don't like push, I guess, like too hard. Like just kind of like just listen. Don't really feel free to. You can give your own opinion, but like just don't like push, I guess. But just be there for that. Be there for that person. Um, but I just feel like as a society now, like, and as a man, like I feel like we're just taught to like not do that, which isn't right. I feel like we need to we should be able to like talk about our feelings to other people, whether it's man or woman. But um, yeah, it's something that I've done before, and I think it helps a lot. So,
You bring up a good point. The way we disparage feelings, right? Like the whole facts over feelings crowd. Um, it's one of the my biggest pet peeves because yes, are there objective facts in the world? Sure. Um, but everyone's set of facts differs based off of their lived experience, their emotional experiences, and so to understand facts, you first have to acknowledge one's perspective, and in their perspective is also their feelings. Um, and so, at the heart of unity in humanity is the recognition that someone else's feelings, they may not play out exactly how you expected, or they may not even seem reasonable to you, right? Like, why are you so upset about this? I just, all I did was leave my shoe on the floor, or this, that, the other. Um, but it wouldn't behoove you or behoove any of us to take a second to do the act of placing yourself in another person's perspective, placing yourself in another person's experience, um, because then you at least will always be trying to understand where they're coming from, and you're actually attempting to conflict solve. Um, and conflict solving is different than trying to prove yourself right. I think proving yourself right can be one of the most dangerous things
yep.
that we as humans do.
Hmm.
It's we're not in the business of trying to resolve an issue. Instead, we're just trying to validate our own pre-assumed position. Um, and that has led to, I think, a lot of strife, at a macro and micro scale. And Noah, your point reminded me of one of my favorite philosophers ever, Emmanuel Levinas, and he wrote a essay, in the 1950s. I believe, well, the essay is called like Ethics on Exteriority, but he was essentially a Jewish philosopher who had survived the Holocaust, and all of his family and friends died. And he was asking himself the question of, how does the country that I love become Nazi Germany? How does that happen? Because the people that I bought bread from turned out to be the very people that hated me. The people that I bought milk from turned out to be the very people that put me in the concentration camps. How does Nazi Germany turn into this? And his answer to that question that guided his ethics essentially said that we had forgotten, or Germany had forgotten, to see in the other love, dignity, respect, and recognize that to love someone is to see them for all that they are, not wanting them to be anything different, and recognize that it is your moral obligation as a fellow human to care for the other. That genuine human experience begins when you see the other and recognize in the other their equal humanness. um, and it's been, at least for me, one of my guiding philosophies since, um, grad school, when I read his essay, because it put it quite clearly that division begins, distrust begins, um, in the failure to acknowledge the other's existence. Um, I think of the origins of slavery in the United States, 1619, when the first enslaved people were brought here. Slavery existed because those in power refused to see the other as fully human. Every dangerous position that a government holds first begins with dehumanization. And if we as a community, if when we're focused on building our community cells, if we focus on seeing the other for all that they are, not wanting them to be anything different, and choosing to love them for that, saying, this is you in your humanness, and you choose love, I don't think you can ever have a society that becomes beholden to a message of hate. And so I've really really found myself falling back on his philosophy, at least in my personal life. And I wonder if maybe we could solve the lack of community issue by teaching more people about, one, that philosophy, but two, um, making that way of life cooler by just living it, you know?
I think every time you start talking, I just want to be a better person. That's every like I'm just listening to it. And I'm like, I'm not doing enough.
We could all be doing more. I think that's the beauty of our human experience, that every single day we do those small things, like Drew, your whole process with the 80, what was it, 90 days or 80 days moderate,
Yeah, 80.
and like those were small actions that you took, but they were ones to improve your life. And to see the other, it doesn't require anyone to be Mother Teresa. It just requires that when someone speaks, we listen. um, when someone needs help, we offer a hand. um, if someone's caught in the rain, you get them an umbrella. It doesn't require you reinventing the wheel. um, I've also kind of likened it to Martin Luther King Jr.'s last speech he gave. I've been to the mountaintop where he was striking for sanitation workers in Memphis, and he has this story he tells in that speech where a Samaritan. It's the story of the Good Samaritan, because um, the Samaritan is on the road and he's talking about how he's been on this road to Jericho, and it's a winding road and it's an unsafe road, and the Samaritan is there, and he's talking about how, like, the priest passed him, and all these people passed him that could help. And Martin Luther King Jr. posits a question I had never thought of, where he said, what if all these people that passed the Samaritan injured on the side of the road were going to meetings to help figure out ways to make the road safer, right? That would be a good thing, because then few people would end up beaten and robbed on that road to Jericho like the Samaritan was. But to that Samaritan who's experiencing that pain, no one stopped, like no one cared. Um, and sometimes we do so much planning on how to fix things, on how to care for our care for this person, that we miss out on just actually being there to help them. um, and that you can strategize all you want, but if we are not first putting the other and recognizing them in their dignity, then you'll never actually take the step to help them. They will always just be a theoretical problem for you to fix. So in short, yeah, we could always do more.
Yeah. I don't even
But
think that I'm tired. I think it's just you're on another level right now for me. Like I
oh,
feel like I'm
Whenever,
like it's not like I'm like I just feel like I'm learning. Like I'm in a lesson here. I
yeah,
feel like it's
I'm legitimately in a lecture right now. It's either I'm in a lecture or I'm watching like a TED Talk.
mhm. Like you should. I think you should start your own radio show and just have people call in. Like this could be a way for you to help bridge a community thing. Like genuinely, I feel like
yeah,
that'd be something you'd be like perfect at.
that's an idea.
I don't know how you go about
That's
starting a
something
radio
I
show,
should.
but you know.
At the very least, I think I always enjoy our conversations, because I think I learn a lot about the world from you two, and I think at least to me, it's integral to making sense of something that just feels so big. So I always appreciate you
Yeah,
guys.
and I mean, a big part of today was the like, you talk about like, talking to each other, communicating with people to try to get other people's worldviews in. And obviously, me and Noah didn't have a ton, but like, I'm gonna speak for Noah here because he kind of did just say it. But like, we both, I think, just took a lot from this personally. It's just like we learned a lot of things because these are some things that you've been working through lately. So like, you're kind of putting it onto us now, and maybe more to other people. So a little less, on the back and forth today, I think, just with everything, but like it's still huge. That's like, that's a more for me to think about, more for me to take to heart, more for me to try to actually put some action to now.
Yeah, we can all be little community builders,
Yeah.
and at the very least, in the words of Winston Churchill, I'm an optimist. There's no use in being anything else. So
It's an encyclopedia for this guy. Like he's got it. Just
well, that's all I had.
well, I think we're good then. It's almost 1 a.m. Noah's been texting me
I
all night in the podcast. No, he hasn't.
no, I have not. I have not.
uh,
I got I recently started watching The Boys, and so that's what I got going on after this one.
polar opposite. But we do appreciate it. It's always good to have you on.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks for having me on your guys' platform. You're doing good work. Talk about community building. I think what you guys are doing is very important.
Yeah, we're all here
We might
for the people.
ramble. We might ramble sometimes. You might talk some nonsense, but there are times where we can get serious and talk about real world issues and
And
um,
each episode, I slam the download button.
let's go. I'm about to slam my head on this pillow.
All right, no, you want to close us? Close us out of here.
No, I think we just we always appreciate Ian coming on. He's always a great guest. Always gives us insight into how just really educates us into doing better in the world. So it's always a pleasure, and yeah, I think we'll see everyone here next time. I don't know when. We'll be back.
All
I'm
right, we'll
sorry.
cut him off. He's rambling now.
I'm rambling. Peace and chicken grease. We'll see you.
Peace.
Peace and chicken grease.